Several teenagers take some pills that are supposed to make them more sociable and intelligent, but they realize that there is a sinister conspiracy behind that medicine. Today on Cinema Recapped, I'll show you The Privilege. The movie begins with a boy named Finn, home alone with his sister at night, when suddenly they both see a monster enter their house, so they decide to go out and try and flee in a car. The monster catches up with them and stops the car, so they decide to leave on foot. The sister tells Finn that they have to jump over a bridge. Finn doesn't want to, so he pushes his sister, making her fall alone. After a while, the police arrive and find the body of Finn's sister, and he's so traumatized by what happens that he ceases speaking. Several years later, Finn has become a teenager, and he's going to therapy. In one session, the doctor tells him that the monster he supposedly saw was only a product of his imagination, and also gives him some pills so that he can better socialize. Later, Finn goes to school with his other sister, a twin named Sophie. Finn leaves Sophie with her boyfriend and then goes to meet his friend, named Lena. At night, Finn goes to a party, but he just stands there watching the others dance, when suddenly a young man appears and gives him a liquid, telling him that if he drinks it, he'll be able to relax. Finn decides to drink it since he wants to be confident enough to go talk to the girl he likes. However, when he drinks it, he gets dizzy and begins to hallucinate, seeing all of them covered in blood. The next day, Finn wakes up with a headache, but he only drinks a smoothie. Then he goes to see his grandfather at the hospital, and there sees an old lady on a stretcher, but he just ignores her. Later, Finn returns home, where he overhears his parents talking, saying that Finn is not ready for something yet. At night, he goes to sleep, but in the middle of the night, he hears some noises in his house, so he gets up to look around. Then Finn sees his parents in the living room, taking off his twin sister's clothes. At that moment, he sees the old lady he saw in the hospital, who approaches his sister and touches her body. Suddenly, the monster appears and pushes Finn, causing him to pass out. In the morning, Finn wakes up and his parents tell him that he sleepwalked during the night and fell down. The next day, Finn is getting ready to go to school when suddenly he sees the monster attacking Sophie in the closet, so he goes to help her. But when he opens the door, he realizes that she is fine, and that what he saw wasn't real. Later, Finn goes to school and tells his friend Lena what he saw, and tells her that he's afraid that something will happen to Sophie, since she has just turned 18 and she's the same age as his other sister when she passed away. That day at school, Sophie's nose suddenly bleeds and she gets very sick, so they send her home to rest. There, her boyfriend comes to visit, but she rejects him and tells him that she never wants to see him again. Finn thinks that's weird, since his sister had never behaved like that before. That night, Finn is taking care of his sister while she sleeps, and we see a creature hidden under her bed. At that moment, Finn receives a message from his sister's boyfriend named Ramin. Ramin tells Finn that he has something important to tell him, and that both he and his sister are in danger, so they agree to meet at a coffee shop. Then we see that Ramin is waiting in the cafeteria when he suddenly hears some strange noises, so he looks around and finds a lady lying on the floor. Ramin approaches the lady to help her, and at that moment the lady opens her eyes and makes Ramin fly several meters back. Then Ramin gets up, a bit dizzy, and the lady ties a cable around his neck and begins to hang him. After a few minutes, Finn arrives at the cafeteria and starts looking for Ramin, but he finds him dead. The police arrive and tell him that Ramin took his own life, to which he replies that it's impossible since Ramin had something important to tell him, but the police don't listen. Finn and his dad go home and tell Sophie that her boyfriend died. Later, Finn goes to his room, and as he was going to take the medicine the doctor prescribed, he realizes that there's a worm inside one of the pills. The next day, Finn takes the worm to school. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and he asks one of his teachers what kind of worm it is. The teacher tells him that it's a very rare fungus, and that it normally grows on corpses. Then Finn and his friend Lena start researching this fungus on the internet and discover that it is a fungus that causes hallucinations, and that in ancient times they were used by witches and shamans because they believed it was a door to the world of demons. Later, Finn and Lena decide to go see a woman who's an expert on mushrooms and tell her about the fungus they found in the pill. The lady immediately gets concerned and asks Finn if he has seen a monster. When Finn says yes, the lady asks him to look her in the eyes and makes him expel the pills he had taken earlier. Finn tells her that his sister also takes the same pills and that she's not feeling very well. The lady says she has to perform an exorcism on his sister, because if she doesn't, the monster will go for her. However, Finn doesn't believe her and decides to leave. Then he goes to see his grandfather at the hospital, and since he used to be a priest, Finn decides to ask him if he ever saw any kind of demon. The grandfather tells him that he saw one in the past when he performed an exorcism on a child, saving him from the demon. So Finn starts thinking that maybe he should call the lady to help his sister as well. Finn goes home and his parents tell him that they're going to the hospital. When they leave, Finn calls the lady to perform the exorcism on his sister, and minutes later, Lena and Finn's crush, named Samira, also arrive. The lady and her son arrive and they install all their devices to communicate with the beyond. Then everyone sits at the table and the lady begins to ask if there is a spirit in the house. After asking several times, the monster appears and attacks the lady. At that moment, Finn's parents arrive, and when they turn on the lights, the monster leaves. Finn's parents ask the lady to leave, so she and her son do so. Finn's parents ask him for an explanation, but Finn decides to run away from home with Lena and Samira. Finn, Lena, and Samira leave in a car and look for a place to spend the night. Meanwhile, Finn's parents go to see Sophie and realize she has a fever, so they decide to call the doctor. Lena tells Finn that she's very scared about the monster and that she thinks this might be their last night spent together. So Finn, Samira, and Lena decide to have a threesome. The next day, Finn and the girls go to look for the lady to finish the ritual. However, when they get to her house, a man tells them that the lady and her son left during the night and that they do not plan to return. Finn, Samira, and Lena decide to go to school as usual. There, Finn decides to call his mom and tell her that he's fine, and also asks how Sophie is, to which his mom replies that she's fine thanks to the doctor, who increased the dose of her medicine. Finn meets up with Lena and Samira when they suddenly see a boy jump off a roof. They call an ambulance, and both Finn and Samira decide to get into the ambulance with the boy. On the way to the hospital, Finn sees the boy spit out a mushroom similar to the one in his pills. Meanwhile, Lena discovers that such pills are sold by a new drug brand and that there will be an event promoting it. Lena decides to go to this event, and there she realizes these pills are being promoted as if they were a solution to make young people more sociable and intelligent. She also realizes that the director of the company that sells the pills is Finn's father. Meanwhile, Samira confesses to Finn that she is the doctor's daughter, and that she's also taking those pills. Finn checks if she has any fungus in her throat, but he doesn't find anything. Later, Finn and Samira look at the backpack of the boy who jumped off the roof, and they find some files about them and Sophie being adopted. At that moment, the father of the boy who is hospitalized arrives and tells Finn and Samira that his son has just died. When he sees that the teenagers have seen the files, he decides to tell them the truth, that everything is part of a ritual that goes from generation to generation, and that makes them privileged. Meanwhile, Lena sneaks into the company that sells the pills and realizes that they have corpses inside, and that's where they get the mushrooms from. Lena gets really scared, so she rushes out of there to tell Samira and Finn what she just saw. Finn visits his grandfather in the hospital, and when he arrives, he realizes that he's just died. When he approaches the corpse, a doctor arrives and gives him an injection in the neck. After a few hours, Finn wakes up at home, tied up. Samira is there, but she's also tied up, and suddenly the doctor appears and tells him that the time has come. The doctor takes him to a room where he sees his mom, his dad, Sophie, and others dressed in tunics. He asks his twin for help, but she tells him that she already went through the same thing. Finn asks his father what all this is about, and he replies that he spent very good years with him, but that it's time for him to give him his body. Then the doctor takes Finn to a stretcher, and we realize that the grandfather's body is there. All the people in tunics tie Finn's head and cut his tongue a little. Then they all sit and hold each other's hands, exhaling a strange smoke from their mouths while their eyes go white. Suddenly the grandfather revives and takes off his clothes. He approaches Finn and climbs on top of him, exhaling that same smoke through his mouth and into Finn's. At that moment, Lena appears and hits the grandfather, and then she sprays the other people with gasoline and sets them afire. After killing them all, she unleashes Finn and they both run out of the house. When they leave, Samira is waiting for them in the car, so the three of them leave in the vehicle quickly. However, when they reach a bridge, the monster appears and causes the car's brakes to fail. They collide with the side of the bridge, but the three of them manage to get out before the car falls. The three teens decide to walk away, and just at that moment we see Samira's eyes also turn white, just like the ones who exhaled smoke from their mouths. Sweet-a-doo, she's already one of them. The end. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to continue receiving recaps of the best horror series and movies. Thanks for watching.